dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it'll change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right.
Howdy, Rob.
Howdy, Matt.
Well, I suppose like all of this was like inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to happen. There's going to be a backlash, and this is the form the backlash would take for good or ill. Like, this is the draft wave of TTRPG development. This is just the cycle of the system.
Yeah, it's a it's a push and a pull. It's a for every reaction there is an equal and opposite reaction, and this is the one. This is how we end up with like a half a dozen entirely indistinguishable but not indistinguishable Orphan Black 5e clones. We got a bunch of.
They Orphan Blacked us. Hey, I'm Dungeon Master Matt.
I'm Dungeon Master Rob.
And today we're talking about the just wide range of systems of things that are, this is going to sound stupid, that are Dungeons and Dragons, but not Dungeons and Dragons, that are coming out this year or came out last year.
Yeah. We're talking, you can call them hacks, you can call them Heartbreakers, you can call them clones, and we'll dig into some of them are more like one of those things than the others, but we really are like looking at a bunch of, very similar but not quite exactly the same Tatiana Maslany's. Like, it really is an Orphan Black situation. Like, they're very similar, but they are different in very distinct and interesting ways. But you will recall, listeners, probably the OGL debacle of, was it now 2 years ago? 2 years ago. Following Wizards of the Coast's massive self-own, a bunch of companies came out announcing plans for, and some of these things were already in the works, which was for the people who could see the writing on the wall. Good for them. Their timing was great, but a lot of them were announced, or announcements were made about the plan to do something, and now we have the result of that is a whole host of 5e. Yeah, we'll call them clones for now, and now it's time to talk about them.
And hopefully you understand what we mean when we like Dungeons and Dragons, but not Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's like, this is, for all intents and purposes, the same game, right?
Yeah.
There's heroes, and there's dungeons, and there's dragons, and there's magic, and elves, and dwarves, and the tone of the game, with small variations, is something you would find in Dungeons and Dragons. But the rules system is different, right? We're just like taking a different approach to the rules.
Yeah, and it's important to note that this is deliberate. For the most part, these games are intended to appeal to D&D 5e players who are either disappointed in Wizards or disappointed in 5e, or both, and want,
or just like tired of it.
Yeah,
I think that's also part of it,
and want something different. So if we are describing them and it sounds like 5e, that's on purpose. This is not the same thing as like a fantasy TTRPG that is just generically high fantasy. These are games that are meant to be Dungeons and Dragons likes. They are meant to evoke the both mechanics, the style of play, the theme, and often even the setting of D&D, for better or worse. Yeah.
Some of these games, they're going to like range the gamut. Some of these games are going to be like completely compatible with the rules of Dungeons and Dragons, and others will be in no ways compatible. But I think what we mean by Dungeons and Dragons, but not Dungeons and Dragons, is that you could tell someone you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and if they weren't super familiar with the rules, and just like watched your interactions and like the stories your players ended up telling, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's Dungeons and Dragons." So, and I should say, Like, I, for one, think this is a good thing. Like, you
Yeah.
know, let a 1,000 million flowers bloom.
Let 1,000 TTRPGs bloom. I agree.
And
I
then
think this is a
we
good
will
thing.
choose one and cut down the rest. It's our plan.
Yeah, and this is interesting because, well, it's interesting for a lot of reasons. We'll talk about, because all of these have sort of like something distinct about them. They're all taking, for the most part, like kind of a different approach. And like we said at the just a minute ago, the reason for this is clear, right? Like, Wizards lost a lot of like goodwill with their fans. A lot of people are tired of 5e or want something different. I am such a person. I have long been kind of like over 5e as a system, but I still like the D&D style of play. But it's kind of shocking like how many of these there are, and
it's funny they're all coming out at the exact same time too. It's
and look, I don't know. At the start of this, I feel kind of bad because I think this is a good impulse. Like Matt said, this is good. Like, let's get more of these.
Yeah, but like I want to like meet people, and they're like, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's like in the South, Rob, when someone says like, I want a Coke, and they say, well, what kind?
What kind? I agree.
Dr. Pepper.
That's right.
And I want to meet people and be like, oh, you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. What kind?
What kind?
Actually, Tales of the Valiant. Actually, Daggerheart.
I agree.
Actually, Draw Steel.
I want this to be I agree. I want this to be the case. I want D&D to get the Xerox treatment, right? Like I want it
Kleenex
to be
that.
Yeah. Like the Kleenex, right? I want people to say D&D, but they're actually playing like a different game. That would be great. But I will say that I feel like this space is already kind of oversaturated. And when we get to talking about the systems themselves, I think you'll see what I mean. There's definitely like a player in mind for all of these systems, but there's also like a lot of overlap. Like if you are looking for something different, any one of these will probably like tickle your fancy, but they're not different enough that they're all going to have their own, I think, distinct players. And a good example of this, which we're probably not going to get to tonight, but is Draw Steel. And if you'll refer to our review of Draw Steel, which we both liked, but Draw Steel is specifically appealing to the tactical wargaming segment of the 5e population that wants more of the nitty-gritty, the combos, the tactical positioning, the high intensity violence combat, which is cool. But that's already like subdividing the audience even further. And then like each of these games kind of like does that again and again. I don't know. Sorry, what I'm trying to say is I don't know that this is going to bring all that many new people into the hobby, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't think. I think one of the ways you can tell is that a lot of these publications, not all of them, like don't have much DM advice attached to their core release, because the assumption is you know how to dungeon master. And you know how to tell the whatever sort of situation and story that your players want to tell. We're here to just give you a different vehicle to do that. Like, you already know how to play 5e. That's the baseline assumption for not all, but almost all of these.
Most of these, yeah. Which is, I don't think, like a wrong assumption, but
no.
And then
to various degrees, some of them are like, oh, but it'll be easier to teach to new people if you're the DM who plays it. And some of them don't have that assumption. So
yeah. Before we jump into the ones that we want to talk about, I would like to to me, like what feels like the elephant in the room, which is that if what you want is D&D, but you don't want to play Wizards of the Coast's D&D, if you don't want to play 5e, if you're looking for a different branch of the same tree, I feel like that already exists, right? I know that it's not everybody's favorite system, but to the extent that like this question exists, it has been answered, and the answer is Pathfinder, and it has been Pathfinder for for over a decade. And it's totally fine if like that's not your favorite system. But to my mind, and I will own up to being a big time Pathfinder stand, including of second edition, but I don't know that any of these does what it sets out to do better than Pathfinder does. And that's kind of like, if it's not better than Pathfinder, why are you doing it? It's sort of like my standard for this, but
yeah.
But
I get like where they're coming from, and I think we're in a new generation.
That's true.
Of people who want to make a role-playing game, specifically a role-playing game that is essentially Dungeons and Dragons, and they know it's worked before.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like,
that's the
Pathfinder
point.
fucking worked for 5 or 6 years, right?
Yeah.
Pathfinder was the best-selling role-playing game
Mm-hmm.
in a lean time for role-playing games, to be sure, but it outsold for at least a couple of years Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition. And like, I think what I mean by like new generation is, I think not all, but some of these designers come from people who either got into role-playing games or got back into role-playing games in a serious way when 5th edition came out.
Yeah.
So like 5th edition's on their brains.
I think you're right. And I do want to say before we get to specifics, that you could accuse a lot of these people of like it being a cash grab, right? Like a opportunistic jumping on the bandwagon. I don't actually think that's true. Like I
have, after reading all of these, I'm like, this is 100% not true.
That's what I want to say is you would not be wrong to like have that instinct, I think, but after reading all of these are all labors of love. People, they believe in these games, they put in actual effort. They really thought that there was a market and a need, or they wanted to put their mark on the hobby. So I do want to. They all get praise from me for that. I don't think any of these are sort of like a lazy cash-in. We have talked about lazy cash-ins in other contexts before, but like these are the real deal. Are they all great? Maybe not, but they are real attempts to sort of like address this issue for better for worse.
And I think some of them are really great. And yeah, I think some of them maybe, are not for me. And I completely understand, like, at least I think I completely understand why this is happening, right?
Yeah.
You get into D&D, specifically 5e, and you're super into it for a long time. You like it, you like the elf dwarf thing, and then you want it to be better. And you find out that, one, maybe the homebrew modules or classes that you published on the side might be taken away from you because of the OGL thing, but probably even before that, you were getting weary of the clunk in the system. And especially when you realized, as everyone slowly did over the last 2 years, that the new edition of 5th edition was not going to be that different. And you're like, I'm really good at house ruling, and like the way I run it at my table with these specific rules works really well. And a lot of people think they can turn that into a whole system. Now that's at like one end, and the other end is people like, I just like the vibe of D&D. I'm going to make a new system from the ground up. I think in the long run, that second option is better for your soul and your finances. However, I could be completely wrong. People might be like, actually, just this slightly different version of 5e is exactly what I want.
Well, and the thing that I will say, and this is maybe a bold statement, Matt, you might disagree, but I actually think every single one of these clones and Heartbreakers is mechanically better, and if not better, more interesting than 5e, because they are the thing that they all do, and this is correct, is they immediately like cut out all the shit that doesn't work because they're not working for wizards and they don't have to do that anymore. And
they don't have to have 6 ability scores.
That's right.
Ranging
that's exactly
1 through
right.
20. Yeah.
And the thing that's immediately obvious to even like an amateur game designer is all the shit that's in 5e that doesn't need to be there anymore, that makes the game frustrating and complicated and doesn't work. And that's why I'm always trying to steer people, if they're like, we want to play D&D, to Shadow Dark or Pathfinder or these days even Daggerheart, because I'm like, you don't actually want to play 5e, you want the vibe. But look, here's these games that are actually fun to play and well designed that you could do instead and get the same experience. So like I totally get it. But to me, to my mind, and this is what Matt was saying, you might as well design something mostly new rather than trying to like fix 5e at this point. And the thing about what we're going to talk about tonight is they're mostly trying to fix 5e, and that's
we're going to start with maybe the ones that are closer to 5e, right? So I guess tonight we may not get to all of these, but some of the things we have on our docket are Nimble 5e, Tales from the Valiant by Kobold Press, DC 20, and Level Up: Advanced 5e. And all of these, with the exception of Nimble, raised at least $1 million depending on exchange rates, and in some cases over or close to 2 million. So like there's a ton of demand, at least in the backer kit Kickstarter way. And we keep calling them fantasy heartbreakers. Do we want to explain a little bit where we got that term?
Oh yeah.
It's from Ron Edwards, who we haven't talked about, and I know is like a polarizing figure in the design space to some, but we have talked about his G and S essay before.
No, this is ages ago. It's funny with I have a couple of friends here in town, and we do some game design together, and Heartbreakers is a term that we're using all the time, but it does mean something specific, and it does apply to these games. And it's actually funny because I think there's like a couple of different understandings to it, but like they're called Heartbreakers because they break your heart. They're like your game that like you care so much about, and like it's your passion project, right? And you're trying to like put all of your heart and soul into this like really cool idea. And sometimes like Blade to the Dark is a heartbreaker, right? And it worked out for John Harper, right? But sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of heartbreakers out there that are really great games that end up being not successful. But it can also, sometimes refer to these types of clones or hacks that are meant to replace or supplant or improve upon an existing game. Did I get that mostly right, Matt?
Yeah, I bring this up. You're right. But I bring this up because, like we mentioned, Pathfinder has done this before, right?
Yes.
But it wasn't the first time. This all happened before, and it all happened again. The wheel of time, the wheel weaves as the wheel
wants, yeah.
Wills. So Ron Edwards wrote on the Forge forums in 2002. About fantasy heartbreakers, and just to quote briefly, imagine a role player who learned of fantasy through Dungeons & Dragons. I can be a half-orc. Think of him breaking fun doors, running his fingers over the monster manual. Sooner or later, he says, I'm tired of these rules and arguing about this or that. Let's do it this way. And sooner or later, after that, he and his friends say, this way is way better. Wow, we wrote a game. Maybe we can publish it too, like Gary did. In the late 70s, this wasn't unreasonable. By the early 90s, though, things were considerably different. This essay is about some 1990s games I'm calling fantasy heartbreakers, which are truly impressive in terms of drive, commitment, and personal joy that's evident in their existence and their details. Yet they're also teeth-grindingly frustrating, like their counterparts in the 70s, but they represent a single creative step from their source, old-style D&D. And unlike those other games, as such, they were doomed from the start. This essay is basically in their favor and kind of a grief-stricken way. So, like, the rest of the essay, like, goes into a bunch of things about specific 90s versions of Dungeons & Dragons, but not Dungeons & Dragons. And what I think I'm just sort of theorizing here is we're in another wave of fantasy heartbreakers, but the source for all of them this time, instead of being AD&D or OD&D, is 5th edition. And I think that's fine. And I think some of these are doomed from the start, and I hope that not all of them are doomed from the start, because in general, we're fans of this.
Well, I would say that I guess we got to like fess up to the fact that even if they're doomed, all of these are massive successes. Like even like the lowest performing one still raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like that's not enough to retire on, but that's enough to keep Nimble. This is Nimble we're talking about. Nimble running for a while, and the rest of these raised $1 million or more, which is a lot of money. And so those are already like huge successes in the TTRPG space. Now,
I did
success,
find one. I found one that didn't raise enough money to like actually do well, and I cut it from the list. We will not mention it because there's no point in.
It's unfortunate for them. But like all the ones we're going to talk about, and again, there's 4 of these we're talking about tonight. One we've already talked about. That's Draw Steel, and they were all. Again, financially hugely successful. When we've talked about Kickstarters before, and there is sort of like, are they successful if nobody plays them and they kind of are consigned to obscurity? That's sort of like up to other people to decide. I, for example, don't think we're going to be talking about the Avatar TTRPG in 5 years from now, but somebody made a lot of money off of that, so I don't know. Does that count as success?
Yeah, I don't know. I see. The thing is, again, I think 4 futures possible. Like we could have a scarce future, Rob, but an equitable one.
Yeah,
where like people are playing all types of Dungeons and Dragons for Dungeons and Dragons, but not many people are playing it. Right, the fad fades away. But I think the ideal situation for me is an abundant future where lots of people are playing TTRPGs.
That's right. Matt and I are abundance pilled. That's right. We want to deregulate the TTRPG industry and empower game developers to make more TTRPGs, because that's how you build. That's what it means to be abundant.
And I think ideally for me, lots of people playing TTRPGs, lots of people playing a D&D like TTRPG, and among that subset of people playing TTRPGs, lots of people are playing Nimble 5e, Tales from the Valiant, DC 20, Level Up, Draw Steel, Daggerheart, Shadow Dark, Forbidden Land, Shadow of the Weird Wizard, Pathfinder 2e, 13th Age 2e, Savage Pathfinder, Legend in the Mist, Dolemwood, and maybe even 2024 and 2014 D&D. Like I want the future where, again,
that's right.
What kind of Coke do you want?
That's right.
It's
let 1,000 D&Ds bloom. No, I agree, and we'll talk about the big picture probably in like next episode. My only concern here is that I just don't know if any of these are going to be bringing in new players, which is I think the real thing for me, because the core. Look, 5e grew the audience massively, right? Credit where credit is due. 5e has seen a massive growth in the number and type of people who play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's great. But I think that there's still room to grow, and that is going to require appealing to people beyond that audience. And these, to me, look like they're splitting that audience, which is okay, which is fine. They're allowed to do that.
Yeah, counterpoint, it is not the job of any individual role-playing game to be like,
that's true,
to get someone into this weird hobby.
That is a good point.
With that, should we talk about one of the one that I think might have a chance to grow the audience, in that, in my opinion, it seems easier to do. It is trying to make things simple, fast, and fun, and that is Nimble 5e by Evan Diaz.
Yeah, we were hoping that there might be some disagreement between us, and maybe there will be later, but Nimble is also my favorite. And this is, if you are listening and the only thing that you care about is what should I do instead of 5e, honestly, this is what I would recommend. I think Nimble is pretty great. And it also, like, of the ones we're going to talk about, it has, to my mind, like the best production values. Like the art is great, the layout is really good. It's just how the book is laid out in terms of content is really well done. Like it flows very naturally. It's easy to read. This is a really, really high quality book. I was really impressed by Nimble. And it's, like Matt said, it's short.
Right. That's what I was going to bring up, is that unlike a lot of the other 5e Heartbreakers that we'll be talking about, this one, like there's 2 books. Like there's core rules and there's heroes. And then there's a GM guide, and all of them clock in under or around 100 pages. The core rules is 50. It's the only one that's like, hey, we did 5e with less text as opposed to the same amount or more, which, guess what, is harder it's not easy
than
to do it with more. And the basic idea here is you're taking some of the core of 5e and you're stripping it down, but not in the same kind of like old school way as Shadow Dark, where things are like brutal and daring, exciting. You could die at any moment. The same vibes as 5e on a lighter rules chassis.
Yeah, there's
which makes sense. That's, I don't know if you know this, Rob. This is how this got started. Is Evan Diaz wrote a pamphlet like, here's my list of house rules for 5e, slap this on top of your system and run it. And then he's like, why don't I just redo the whole thing?
Yeah. And the end result is good. There's 4 stats and 10 skills, and it works great. It's also got simplified rules for HP and wounds and tactical combat, attacks, conditions. But like Matt said, it feels like D&D. It does not feel like the rules, pared down rules of like the Dungeon Crawl Classics or Shadow Dark. Like it
feels like 5e D&D.
Yeah, it's got and this is the thing that I was most impressed by, is like it feels very much like 5e, but with so many fewer rules. And I was like, you could just do that. I wish that somebody had done this sooner. I wish that this is the type of 5e that I have been playing for years. He also did something very clever here, and this is just like such a small thing, but this was one of my big gripes with Daggerheart, if you remember, is if you're going to break with the formula, break with the formula. There's the classes are very recognizably 5e classes for the most part, but they're not just named Barbarian and Druid and Rogue and whatever. They're named Berserker, the Cheat, Commander, Mage, and there are some new ones, which is cool. But I'm like, you don't have to have a Paladin, you don't have to have a Druid, you don't have to have a Sorcerer. Like, make a new class. Like if you're gonna make a new game, and I'm still kind of really hoping that Daggerheart's like final version does this, but you don't have to have like the exact same things. And by the same token, they've got all the like common ancestries, human, dwarf, elf, whatever, but then they've got a bunch of like fun exotic ancestries if you want to like get spicy with it. I really liked how they approached this.
I disagree on your point of renaming the classes, because if they are exactly the same thing, if you're like Storm Seer, I forget what the druid is called.
Storm Shifter.
Storm Shifter is essentially a druid. They have weather spell casting and shape shifting. You might as well call it a druid for the WoW and 5e heads. To me, that's fine, but I see your point. I disagree, because if your point is let's get people from 5e to play this, that is an easy thing.
I want to break from that mold. Like the thing is, like I want to pull people away. I want to keep the vibe and aesthetic, right? That I understand why people want to do a dungeon crawl. They want to have a high fantasy adventure. They want to be a party of, trooping across the lands. But there's a bunch of other shit that comes with those assumptions that I don't care about. And I like that Nimble has, I think, gone as far as they can to maintain the aesthetic but while still like leaving room for originality, I guess. Because like I just don't want to see, I guess, Matt, I don't want to see another druid. I've seen enough druids to last me a lifetime,
Maybe it's a Yeah, I get your point, but like for me, the thing that I want changed is the way the rules work.
Yeah.
The thing
I think that is the important thing.
I guess
that is the important
I don't
thing. Yeah.
care about the names changing. I see why you do care about the names changing. Maybe it could also be, well, no, this is an SRD thing. I was like, is this not an SRD document? And you bet it is, because most of the game is the same. However, there's a lot of key changes for the things you use the most. Rob mentioned the simplified abilities, which now no longer have scores. They're just modifiers and skills. Combat is moved to a simple 3 actions around, and you no longer, I think this is the real innovation here, you no longer roll to hit. You roll your weapon's damage dice when you attack a creature. You just hit, unless, of course, you roll a 1. And then weapons and regular things can use the same stacking advantage and disadvantage, but you can have double advantage and double disadvantage, that kind of thing.
So the rules are very simple, and the changes are relatively light. But what I was so impressed by on this one is how the very simple changes to combat, to me, made it immediately seems like it would run better than 5e, and I really like this combat system. So you've got 3 actions similar to Pathfinder, and
right, in all of these, there's a lot of Pathfinder.
There's a lot of Pathfinder. There's also a lot of 4e in all of these, and that's correct. That's we threw the baby out with the bathwater. That was correct. But I really like this, and this is like a little thing. But you roll your damage die, and your leftmost die is called the primary die, and it determines whether the attack is a hit or a miss.
So if you're rolling like 2d6 for a greatsword, the left one is your primary die.
You have exploding critical hits, which is a simple change, but a delight to me. And
Rob, just in case anyone was wondering, I mathed this out. I was like, wait, is like the 3d4 greatsword like worse than a 1d? I mathed it out. They checked the math. It seems fine to me.
Nice. Okay. I did not check the math. I thought it would just be fun. I didn't care. They also, I really liked this. If you want to attack more than once a turn, you can do that, and you get cumulative disadvantage for each attack. This is the way that it works in it works this way in some versions of Shadowrun, and I always like this. I always like that, like, you can just take as many attacks as you feel comfortable doing.
Was it Pathfinder 2e, the multiple
That's right,
action penalty, multiple attack penalty?
I always liked this. I always thought this was a good solution, because I don't know, in a lot of D&D, the way this works is you take a bunch of feats to attack more than once, but I like that it's built in.
Right. 5e essentially does this. They're just features gated behind 6 levels of certain classes, right?
Spells use mana, and this is a consistent thing that we'll note throughout all of these, is that there's a lot more pools, and we love pools, and sometimes pools are good and sometimes pools are bad, but very few of these use fancy and casting in the same way that 5e is attached to it. And mana is simple. You could upcast spells by using more mana. This actually resembles like psionics to me from third edition and 3.5. Yeah. I like this. I think this is great. I hate fancy and casting. Get rid of it.
One of the ways that rules language is cut throughout this book, but one of the ways they make the like core rules not 300 pages is not spending half of the book on spells. The spells are a very small part of the book. The descriptions are simple. That is, I think, a good change. For me, one thing that is lost if you are playing D&D is one of the things that I really like about Dungeons & Dragons is how weird some of the magic is. Like, I don't think, like, if you ask me to sit down and design a magic system, I would probably come up with something similar to this. Well, there'd be light spells and fire spells and wind spells. I would probably do that. I would not come up with a spell like Color Spray, where it's an illusion spell that shoots a cone that blinds your enemies, right? And you can mention, pick any of your favorite spells, like mirror image or whatever, right?
Yeah. There are a lot of like weird. To the extent that I want to give Gygax credit for anything, some of his spells are fucking bonkers. Like that, he's got simple things like Fireball. Fine, that's straightforward. But then, you've got Tree Stride and Color Spray and Mirror Image and Displacement and all kinds of weird stuff. That is true. I do even stuff like Prestidigitation. Like I do like that stuff in D&D, and but the thing is,
some
Matt,
of it's here.
The thing is, Matt, when you include that, it balloons the size of the game. And
I think I don't know how many. I have to check D&D Beyond, but there's got to be like over 500 spells in 2014 D&D by the end of it. Like that's too many, right?
Too many.
I'm not saying go there. I'm just saying I like the flavor of spells that are kind of weird and wacky in what they do. Now, Nimble does still have some of those, but most of them are about like move to here, move an enemy here, shoot a weird thing. I like the spells that do kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, I agree with the decision to cut those, but I also think that is like a key part of D&D, which is a shame to lose. The other cool thing that they do with just like actions, I really like this. This is also sort of similar to Pathfinder. Is you've got reactions, which simply cost an action. They come out of your next turn, so you're making a decision whether or not you want to have more actions on your turn or react, and you can defend or make an attack of opportunity, help, that kind of thing. This is good. This is very simple. There's 4 you can do. This is very clever. They've got minions. I love minions.
Right. I had a question about the reactions, right?
Okay.
So you get 3 actions in a round, and then reactions cost 1 action and are performed not on your turn. You can't perform a reaction more than once per round. And then it says, like, what if you wanted to do 2? Like, the reactions are defend, interpose, opportunity attack, and help. One little call out says interpose and defend. Yes, as long as you have enough actions to spend, you can interpose and defend at the same time. However, you won't be able to do either reaction again until your next turn is over, since there's a limit to 1 round. So whenever you use a reaction, it's costing you an action from the next round. Is that?
I think so. Okay. That's my understanding.
I like that rule. I
like that.
I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, I think that's a good rule. Again, you're making it requires players to sort of like judge their opportunity cost of these things. I think that's good. I think it keeps people engaged when it's not their turn, and it makes those decisions interesting. What I like about it is it's very simple, but it's a simple way to keep players interested. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, and I will say the way spells and damage work is just, it's really great because, again, you can still miss. If you roll a d10 on a longsword, you're missing 10% of the time, right? And, like, there's nothing you can, well, there are some things you can do to modify that, but, like, it is less likely that in D&D 5th edition, where the assumption is you're hitting, like, 66% of the time. The thing that I thought could have been better in these rules is the way multi-dice attacks work. So, like, let's say you're rolling 46 for a spell or 3d4 for a greatsword. You have this left-hand die, and I try it on the table, and I was like, it's always clear. I think it would have just been better to tell people to get 1 die of a different color. That's what I would tell my table. Obviously, it's the first thing that comes to mind, so it's not like a thing that needs to be changed.
You could do it both ways. I did think the left-hand
I could
die
see
was
this
a clever,
confusing new people.
Yeah, a clever thing, but I would just pick a different color die.
Yeah.
This is like the least important thing, but I didn't think I was going to care, but I did sort of like it. Just like D&D, you've got backgrounds and other like character creation choices, and they're fun and interesting. They're things like back out of retirement and academy dropout, and raised by goblins. They're more fun than the like the D&D backgrounds. Character creation is really simple and interesting. I really was impressed with like how quickly and naturally it flowed. Again, the same feel as D&D, but just twice as fast.
Right. And they all fit on 2 pages, so you can print it out front and back and hand it to your players. Like, again, 2 pages with art, with big text. So, like, when we're talking of, like, was the scale, is this more complex than 5e or less complex? To me, this one's 100% less complex for both existing and brand new players.
I agree. It does have like it has a nice crunch to it, I would say, though. Like it's not like it's not as rules light as Shadow Dark or another like OSR style game. It's like 1/2 step up from that, but it is so much simpler, so much less complex than 5e.
Yeah, it really took to me, it is taking the magic shining path that is taking some of the best ideas of the OSR and Pathfinder 2e specifically and mixing them with the essentials of 5e that I think people are familiar with. Like the equipment list is pretty similar to the 5e one. Like the conditions are very similar to 5e. And I think one way I can prove my point is that the character sheets for this game can fit on half of a page as opposed to a whole page.
Yeah. The other neat thing, I think, I enjoy this, like, so the spells, like Matt said, there's far fewer, and there's fewer. There are some utility spells which are neat, but they're a lot less weird ones. They do so they're divided into different basically elements or types: fire, ice, lightning, radiant, etc. There are sort of like combos you can do. So some spells will set people on fire, which give other spells a bonus, or some spells will hamper them, which can give them an advantage. You do cool things if you cast lightning spells on metal objects. It's small. I like this. I enjoy combos. I like comboing things together. This is fun. This is a trade-off and a difference from 5e, but I really like that there's like only like 8 spells in each like sub category, but they like interact with each other in interesting ways. I think this is neat.
Yeah. I like from the dungeon master perspective that not all, but like your more basic monsters, your kind of henchmen, your minions type like that, can essentially be written with 2 numbers, right? Like a basic kobold or whatever is 12. That's its hit points. 1d4 plus 2. That's its attack. And then you put in parentheses, like, does it have a ranged attack or not? Like, that's super helpful for, like, when you're running at the table. I think that's really great. But unlike, let's say, OSR, where, like, maybe that is pretty much the only type of monster you can get, you do have more advanced monsters that have like some kind of special actions and things like that.
There's options, right? The baseline for a mob is 2 numbers, but you can get more complicated. But like I like that it's a very simple chassis to build on.
Right. But again, this goes up to like a dragon that is still, it could fit on a playing card, right? Or maybe at your most complicated monster, a tarot card. Let's see. So I think it's pretty clear we like this one.
Yeah.
You know, I have my reservations that if they were trying to do 5e in full, you know, my favorite part got cut, but I think, which is the weird spells, but I think all of the other stuff more than makes up for that. If that is what you're looking for, if you're looking for things that play like 5e, and let you build characters we didn't really mention. There's still classes that get features every level and subclasses that have all the You can still build a character like 5e. You can still import a 5e adventure, but it's simpler. Nimble 5e is a good recommendation for you.
Yeah, I mean my criticism, objection of this, if I have one, is that it's still just a lot like 5e. It's a much better, much cleaner, much like quicker version of 5e. But I would love to see this innovation and this design acumen, just a different game. I would rather that it not be 5e at all. But but like I said at the beginning, if what you're looking for is 5e, but without all the stuff that's a pain in the ass, which is a feeling that I have had, this is it. This is stripped down to just the good parts, streamlined, and with a little bit of like extra stuff added to make it interesting. I think this is really good if you are trying to like get away from 5e, but your players just love the D&D aesthetic. You could switch to this, and I mean they would notice the difference, but like, I don't think
you could tell strangers you're playing 5e,
right? I don't think
would
that
probably not notice.
Most people would have a problem with this. You'd have to tell them they're playing a Stormseer instead of a Druid, and that it might be difficult. But other than that, it would be very, very easy to make this switch.
It's like an American could tell the difference between Coke and Dr. Pepper in a blind taste test. But like if you gave it to like a Neanderthal cave person from like the year 20,000 BCE, their taste buds would be so overwhelmed by the carbonation and sugar they couldn't tell the difference.
They couldn't tell.
And if we think that non D&D fanatics are those Neanderthals, then yes, they couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah. So this
that
comes
was
with
a tortured metaphor.
No, I liked it.
Sorry.
So this comes with our highest recommendation within the context of like what we're talking about. I think this one is really good.
Right. Okay, we still got a bunch that are really close to 5e, so let's stick in that area. Which one do you want to talk about next, Rob?
Well, let's talk about DC-20 next. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, and this is the it's the next step, and it's the opposite of Nimble 5e, at least in my perspective. It is DC-20 is by the dungeon coach Alan Bjorkgren. And it is also released on a crowdfunding campaign. It made, I think, like 6 times the amount of money as Nimble.
It made 10 times 5e. The amount of money.
10 times
it made,
the amount of money.
$2.2 million. And I think Nimble raised 200 something. So not quite 10 times as much money.
And I think this shows the power of like having a platform already. Like if you have followers, like the Dungeon Coach runs a very popular D&D advice YouTube channel. Having a platform before you do a Kickstarter. And then our last caveat is DC-20 is still in beta, right? We couldn't wait any longer to do this episode. The release version we have is 0.9.5. So it's got to be really close. It's only 0.05
away
from 1.0. So
and I
feel confident enough to talk about it.
That in terms of could you play this, it is done. It is a full set of rules. Does that mean it's finished? No. But we're not talking about like there's a bunch of stuff missing and you have to fill in the gaps. Like it's all there. But it may be, well, it needs some polish.
Yeah. I mean, part of our Nimble is done. The layout is done. It's in a tight book. It's got great art.
Yep.
This doesn't have art. It looks like the layout was done in home brewery or
I was gonna bring this up. I'm positive that the layout was done in home brewery or a similar program. That's not necessarily bad. Some of our
right, because it's not finished, right?
Some of our stuff has been done in home brewery, which is a nice. But also, the thing about that is the reason why we use that and other people use that is because it's specifically designed to match the layout and format and aesthetic of Wizards of the Coast. That's the point of home brewery is to homebrew something for 5e. So look, I guess let's just jump into it. I feel like for $2.2 million, there should be more here. It should be better laid out. The art should be better. There
isn't any art yet.
The fundamentals of this, I am just sort of again comparing it to Nimble, pretty disappointed in. There's there is some art, but it's not great. And the layout again is mostly done at Homebrewery. So I don't know where that money's going, Matt.
Well, again, it's not finished, so maybe they're saving it all for like the finished product, and they're like, we're working on the rules, and then once all the rules are done, then it goes to layout. So I'm not gonna knock DC 20 for this, but I will say, and I think it pairs nicely with Nimble, in that while many things are different, I don't feel like this is a less complex system. Now, in play, it might play faster or more exciting than 5e, but I don't think it is less complex. I think you can say the same thing about Pathfinder 2e. Like, in play, it runs faster than 5e. Is it a more complex system? From my perspective, yes.
The thing is, there are some things that I think make a move towards being less complex. There's 4 stats.
Right.
There's
so we got the 4
skills.
stats. Everyone has recognized 4 stats.
4
is way
stats.
better than 6.
He's got this thing called the Prime modifier, which is interesting. Basically, you pick...
explain that.
I'm not sure I fully understand it, so I'm going to try Matt.
Yeah.
But you pick sort of like what is your thing as an adventurer, and then that's what you use for attacks, spells, saves, and awareness, which I want to circle back to. So, like, this means that you can be a charismatic barbarian or a strong rogue. You don't have to, like, torture yourself with a bunch of, like, feats or, like, gaminess. You can just be like, this is how my character works.
Right. If you're like a smart rogue, and I stab them in my kidney as opposed to using my dexterity, that's what you're going for here. And I understand exactly where this came from, right? It's a stupid limitation of 5e that you can't make a smart rogue or a strong rogue or a charismatic rogue. You should be a dexterous rogue. On the other hand,
I know where
on the other hand, do you want to say it together? What's the point?
Yeah.
Why are you having stats then? Why are you tying stats to these checks? Right? If you made it this far, like, you know, it's like you're so close to the top of the mountain and you didn't realize.
My guess is that, and maybe correctly, Mr. Dungeon Coach thinks that it would be too far to do away with like these attributes entirely. And so the sort of like splitting the difference is this prime modifier. Here's the thing. I don't love it. I guess I sort of like respect the attempt that is being made here. It is a clever solution. I don't know. It's kind of like when you see somebody who's like jury-rigged their car in an impressive way. You're like, oh, okay, I'm impressed with your technical prowess. I wish you could just afford to get a new car, because like what you've done here
to me, it's like seeing a bicycle with like a motor attached to it. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I wish you could afford a moped or a motorcycle, because that's what you want. You know?
Yeah. So yeah, it's
the electric bike of systems.
It is.
No, electric bikes actually do.
No, but it's the electric bike that's been like stapled together, not the kind that you buy pre-built. It's like somebody has installed an electric motor on their regular motorcycle. Anyway,
and we don't agree. It doesn't make the game go faster, and it makes total sense, right? Again, the things Rob mentioned, right? Like attack rolls and was it saves and perception.
Awareness.
Like,
so I do kind of like this awareness change. So instead of having perception, you have awareness, which is based on your prime stat. So all the other stats are based on like one of your attributes, or all the other skills are based on an attribute. But no matter what, your awareness is based on your prime stat. This gets around the very common problem where roll perception, right? And if you happen to be somebody who doesn't have a high wisdom or high perception score, you're just... Again, it's the most common roll you will make in most D&D campaigns, so this gets around that. But again, the same problem.
This is a great example with the perception one. It's like you half untied the Gordian knot, whereas if you were willing to break more with 5e, you would just cut through it and realize, well, maybe perception is a bad idea to have in the game. This thing that is the catch-all check for everything. We should not have perception checks or divide the way they're done into several different things or something like that. Instead, we're just like, well, everyone adds their prime stat to perception.
Yeah. Another thing he's done that I do kind of like.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would do it the same way, but I do like is he's divided skills into skills and trades. So your skills are things like, survival, trickery, acrobatics, whatever, your standards. And trades are things like alchemy, arcana, masonry, lockpicking, right? And so you have points and skills to assign to both. I do kind of like this distinction. Do I think it's good or necessary? Maybe not, but I can kind of see what's happening here, and I don't hate it.
It is correctly recognized that some skills are more important than others and has moved the non-ones into less important skills. But again, I feel like from a game design solution, it's moving those non-skills into another bin of the rules. Like, hey, you don't have to make a check to build a barrel or whatever. Like, if you want to say your character is good at building barrels, they
right.
are, or you just use this attribute, or you just require these tools, or it's redoing the skill system like many other role-playing games where there's a craft skill that represents all your skills and crafting, or as in Nimble, there's just a lore skill. Right.
The other thing here, and I like this a lot less, is there's a thing called mastery, and mastery is just proficiency by a different name. In fact, it follows the exact same progression, and this is an even better example of
proficiency plus expertise, right? You can also like double it,
right? You can double it, but like this is a great example of what we were just talking about. Proficiency was one of the sort of like the jankiest and like least intuitive parts of 5e. I would simply do away with it. I don't see any reason to keep. I don't think proficiency is a good rule or a rule that makes sense.
Because you can put skill points in that like up your proficiency. So essentially you're just using skill points.
Right.
Except they're now transmogrified
into
by the Pope into proficiency.
Into mastery. You
know what, Rob? This one reeks of a house rule.
One
that I have had in my own games where it's like, if you want to, even if you're like not a rogue, you can like have proficiency plus proficiency and a half plus expertise in certain skills if you want to express your character in that way. And that is a good motivation, right?
Yeah.
To do this. It's just the way it turned out in a finished game that's standalone has to be judged by a different metric than a house rule.
Yeah. I don't know why you would keep this. Just change the numbers, adjust the numbers. You don't need proficiency. Proficiency was a patch for 5e that they instituted to make it make sense. Don't keep it. You don't need it. Matt, what do you think about dynamic attack saves? What did you think of this thing?
You'll have to remind me what dynamic attack saves are, because here's actually. I wonder if some of these authors were like worked for an airline or a programming company or the military, because there's so many abbreviations in this.
I really
AP, MP, dynamic.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So the dynamic attack saves, and I do really hate this name. It's really fucking annoying. But the basic idea of it is that there are 4 possible outcomes when you cast a spell on someone. So both the attack roll that you make and the save that your target makes matter. So there's like, what happens if your attack hits and they fail their save? What happens if your attack misses and they fail their save? What happens if your attack hits and they save? And basically the way that it works is that there's both damage and an effect. And so it matters on both ends, both your attack and their saving throw. I guess once again I'm going to say
it's house rule brain.
Yeah, I don't hate this. This is not something I would put in my own games. From a balance and gameplay perspective, I think it's kind of neat. I think it could be cool. It's janky. I don't know why you would build it this way to begin with.
If you sat down at a a Dungeon Coach Masters D&D table, and he handed you a little card. Sorry, we didn't do this for Evan Diaz. We shouldn't do this for DC20.
Well, that's because Evan Diaz doesn't have a brand. His brand is not Dungeon. Yeah. Like Dungeon Coach has a brand. He has invited this.
Who would just put Dungeon in their brand name? Just
he has
people
invited
full of
us
ego
to call
also
him
us.
the Dungeon Coach. So
okay, well, we call ourselves Dungeon Master. Anyway, like if you sat down at this game's 5e table and they handed you the house rule card that says, hey, this is how like spells work. So if you cast Disintegrate and you miss or whatever, the effect still happens, but the damage doesn't, or something like that, I would be like, that's a cool house rule, right? It makes a thing that feels unsatisfying in the game, where there is both a attack roll and a save, which is not that often in 5e spells, as far as I can remember, feel more satisfying.
I think he might have changed some of the spells so that it fits this better.
Right.
But it does feel like a house rule. Speaking of house rules, man, the next one also really smacks of this, and basically he's made it so that advantage and disadvantage stack. And this is not, I don't know, this is not bad. I guess it's really like it is relatively simple. You just sort of like keep track of instances of advantage and disadvantage, and you just, advantage 2, disadvantage 3, you have 1 disadvantage. But I also I don't know, I'm not sure I would do it this way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't actually know, but I feel like an earlier version of like Lancer had this mechanic. Oh, yeah. And then the authors of Lancer were like, actually, we should make the disadvantage and advantage stacking a D6, right? So that you can have essentially 3 times advantage, and you roll 3d6 with your d20. I don't think this works as well, because if I'm remembering the curves, once you get to 2 or 3 disadvantage, the probability, like you're guaranteed to succeed. Now, I think someone who likes this game would say, I do want to play a game where like if I absolutely have to succeed in a roll, I can absolutely succeed on a roll. I will spend my whole turn, and you can do that in this game. You can spend extra action points to just add more dice to your roll. And this reminds me of some Monty Cook style design, where it's like you can put all your action points into something, you can spend your resources, and you will succeed. And that's essentially what it's saying. It does take away from the simplicity of the advantage-disadvantage system. I have to say, I guess I do kind of like, I see why you think it's messy. For me, I do kind of like the stacking system, but it does mean you're no longer playing 5e where there is this one mechanic, advantage and disadvantage. It's very simple. You either have it or you don't. You roll 2 and take the highest or the lowest, and it makes it something slightly more complicated. Is it that hard for players to figure out? No, but it is a move away from that.
I go back and forth on this, because I think I wrote down in my notes that I liked it, but then I was talking about it, and I'm like, I don't know if I like it. So I think it's fine. I think it could work. I don't think it's that complicated, but I do kind of like the thing that you described Lancer doing better. I love advantage and disadvantage as a sort of thing that is now standard across like all types of TTRPGs. I think it's a very simple and good idea.
Yeah.
I just generally like how it's implemented in every other situation than 5e, and so I would start there instead of trying to make the 5e version work.
Yeah. I think we also have to talk about if we're doing this one is we have to talk about the action system.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, we rolled right past the action system. Yeah. So, Nimble had 3 actions. DC 20 has 4. Well, you have 4 action points.
Right. You have 4 AP, right? And there's a lot of role-playing systems that use this kind of AP setup, right?
We got a lot of points in this one, Matt. You got action points, you got mana points, you have stamina points, you have grit points.
Here is I think a tip for designers out there everywhere is one pool system for like one thing is good. 2 is fine. Once you're up to 3 or 4 and they're all kind of similar and they can all be used to modify each other, you're losing me, and you're also making your rules really hard to explain, right? For example, forbearance. When a creature you can see within 1 space, capitalized, is targeted by an attack, you can spend 1 AP and 1 SP as a reaction, capitalized, to become the new target of the check, capitalized, and choose to switch places with the original target, parentheses, if it's willing. Like, I didn't like pick that from anywhere as an egregious example. That was literally scrolling through the page I was on when you started talking about this.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. I think if you're going to do pools, it should be only pools, or it should be very, very limited, right? Either your system needs to be a pool system if you're going to have like a bunch of different pools.
You've got 4 pools, 4 ability scores.
Yeah, just
see the connection there?
Right, exactly. But what again, this is an opinion. You might disagree. It kind of feels like the TTRPG version of like a Eurotrash game or Ameritrash game, like how you've got Ameritrash, sorry, not Eurotrash, Ameritrash, where you've got cards, you've got dice, you've got meeples, you've got everything at once, right?
And real metal coins. Yeah.
And
there's a
fun.
Draft mechanic in the game.
I don't hate
we love it.
Champions of Midgard Ameritrash game, but they're called the word trash is in there for a reason, right? When you start like stapling a bunch of different like types of systems, not just systems, but like types of systems together, it gets messy. And you can do it.
Clear, yeah,
but
you can do it.
You gotta. In my opinion, you really need to be discerning.
Here's the problem, and maybe you haven't gotten this from our review so far, is that we skipped over it because a lot of this system is still the same as 5e,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
But we love role-playing games where you have a cool set of action points and you have a cool set of options that you can spin those action points on in combat. The problem arises when you staple that cool system to the chassis of 5e.
Yes. The problem here is 5e generally is. And yeah, we haven't.
You
talked
had made
about,
this fantasy system with action points and all these other things, not based and fundamentally rooted in 5e. I think it would work great.
I think it would work great. I think there's some really good ideas here, and I guess when we get there, my ultimate criticism is going to be the same but more intense than Nimble, which is I just wish that he had made a different game. Nimble, I think, is a pretty good version of a pared down and streamlined 5e. This is a messy, complicated, sort of like lateral 5e, and the good ideas here are just sort of like mashed together with 5th edition, and I would rather just see those good ideas stand on their own.
Yeah, it is this role-playing game did some paring down, right? Okay, we're getting rid of some attribute scores. That's some like low-hanging fruit. But by adding more complexity to the rest of the system without paring other stuff down, it feels unwieldy, right? This is the Pathfinder, right? When Pathfinder 2e came out a long time ago for us, I think at least my initial reaction was, oh boy, it's moved really far from the 3.5 roots, and I'm not sure that's what I wanted. But I think the reason why Pathfinder 2e works is it was willing to move really far from those roots. And this didn't quite get there, because I think at the end of the day, that is the best comparison for this system. This wants to be the Pathfinder for 5e.
Yeah.
And it's not, or the Pathfinder 2e for 5e.
For 5e.
And the problem is Pathfinder 5e is not ever set up where it can add these types of things.
That's right.
on.
Unlike 3.5, like there's really like it doesn't work the same way. And like the thing that works about Pathfinder 2e, and again, you don't have to love it, but it got more complicated. It added a bunch of things, but they felt comfortable making the changes and making sort of like the design and layout and sort of like the way things related to each other with things like keywords and rules first language that makes it work, right? In my opinion, that makes it intelligible and functional, because they did not have to adhere to the rules of 3.5 or 5e, and it feels to me more like an innovation or an evolution than just a heartbreaker or a hack. And this
Right.
This is very much a hack. And I think like the thing that bothers me about DC 20 the most is that there's both a bunch of hacks, a bunch of changes to the core rules, but then a bunch of additions. And together, I guess I would have preferred one or the other. I would have preferred like, you're going to change the rules to work better, or here's a bunch of additions to the 5e rules that I would like to add. Together, it's too much. It's just it's a mess.
Like, here is, for example, step 5 and step 6 of character creation, right? Step 5, stamina and mana points. Fill in your character's SP and MP. Martial characters have 1 stamina point. Spellcasters have 6 mana points. Hybrid characters, such as Spellblade, have 1 stamina point and 3 mana points. Step 6, defense. Fill in your character's precision and area defenses. Precision defense, PD equals 8 plus CM plus agility plus intelligence plus bonuses. Area defense, AD equals 8 plus CM plus might plus charisma plus bonuses. And I say both of these things, I know I'm sounding mean, but from a place of empathy, because I can imagine myself really in love with 5e. I've been there before. And I can also imagine myself being like, I wish I could make combat more dynamic. And then you start adding things and then tweaking a couple of things without changing the core chassis. And then this is where you get from a place of coming up with cool ideas, but then never doing the like big picture game design.
Yeah.
That like you at some point, right? You have to, when you have a formula that has 5 things for something for a starting character, you should ask yourself, could this be done differently?
Well, and you mentioned Pathfinder, but I actually think the game that does what this is attempting best is actually Draw Steel. Like I think the MCDM game is doing this, but they were willing to break with the formula in a way that DC 20 is not. And
right. They started from the beginning.
Yeah. And that game is recognizably D&D, but like they changed the things that didn't work to fit the type of game that they wanted to make, which was a more tactical, combat focused, dungeon crawling, fighty type of game. And this feels like they were not willing to take that final step.
Yeah, I mean, this is to bring it back to 5e more broadly, right? I mean, this is like D&D's problem is they hire usually some of the better game designers in the world and the best layout and marketing and art team, but they can only go so far because they are weighted to this tradition. And so if you're going to weight yourself to that tradition, you should have the reason should be it's going to make you a shitload of money because you've got the D&D name attached to the front and the nostalgia.
Yeah.
And if you're not, if you're doing what some of these are doing, some of the ones that we're not going to get to do today, like Tales from the Valiant, is you better make a better game than 5e. And I don't think that's even with all our criticism saying you should just start from the ground up. I do think you can make, a 5.575 D&D that is essentially the same but better. But all of these things have to be, you gotta hit it right in the bullseye, or the whole thing's gonna fall apart, because you're building an airplane that's already in the air.
I mean, for all my gripes, I feel like with another, a few more rounds of polish, DC-20 might be a better game than 5e. It's still like it has cut some stuff that doesn't work. Sure. It's like less broken. Like most of our problems are it's just kind of too much, but it works. Like I think the system is functional and even maybe fun. I imagine if you were playing with the dungeon coach, it's probably a great time because he understands the system inside and out because he wrote it. I think it would be hard to run this if you were not him. But I think there's like the core of a good game here. It needs a lot of polish, and it's not my business, but I would love to see the books. I really want to know where those $2 million are going, but yeah, the thing is,
they're probably going to tariffs at this point. They're probably probably all getting burned away in protectionism.
But it's not enough to be better than 5e because unfortunately that's a low bar, and a lot of games have done that better already. So you have to be offering something else, I guess.
Yeah, you really do. And again, we should point out at the closing of talking about DC-20 is that this is beta 0.95, 9.5, and that the layout is done fast and on the cheap, and there is no art. And we all know we just like automatically feel differently when we're looking at pretty pictures. But I will say, like, I don't like the way this is written. Like, it is going for that Pathfinder 2e style of like keywords and like linking things together and easy lookups. The problem is Pathfinder had a team of really, really good designers working for a really long time. You have billions of playtesters. And so that's why it worked.
And Pathfinder they have icons, they have, color coding, they have, like they really like
this could have that eventually too.
It could have this eventually, but like if the thing is that's only going to work if you really go for it. Like you can't, and this is also a problem with 5e that I've complained about incessantly, is like you can't split the difference.
Yeah.
You can either use natural language or you can use, this sort of like keyword mechanized version of it, and both are fine. But in my opinion, the splitting the difference really doesn't work and it confuses people. We'll have to see what like the final version is, but this ain't it, I guess.
This is, it's made to be a lookup book, but it's not at that lookup book stage yet. It is not a fun read. Oof.
No.
It's a real tough read. It is I had a tough time reading through this one because of that non-natural language.
Me too.
But again, like we said with Pathfinder 2e, once you're there, it really works. So, well, I like that we talked about these, that in my mind, they parallel, so Nimble 5e and DC-20, like two games that I really am confident in how they work, which is Shadow Dark, which is, again, pared down, way pared down OSR, and Nimble's like halfway there, and then Draw Steel, which is also still in beta, but is moving the other way with more fun combat things, which is kind of where this one wants to go, DC-20. So we only got through two, but just, big picture, there's a lot of these out there. Hopefully next episode we'll talk about Tales from the Valiant, Level Up. and bring in some of these other games we've been alluding to, like Draw Steel, Daggerheart, Shadow of the Weird Wizard, Dolemwood. But let's move to maybe our final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, really big ones will have to wait until we've gone through all of these. But in case you didn't pick up on it from what we were talking about, I think the major problem here is that, even if you're willing to make radical departures, 5e is a very difficult framework to fix or add on to or modify or really do anything with. And I have a lot of respect even for, I know we spent a lot of time griping about DC20, but I have a lot of respect for the people who put this effort in. Matt and I tortured ourselves for a long time trying to make the Warlord work in 5e, and we could have not done that, but we did, and I'm glad that we did. But I really feel that a lot of talent is being, I don't want to say squandered, but it's just that could be better put toward making a similar game in an OSR setting or using any number of other frameworks or open gaming licenses to just you don't got to do 5e, I guess is the thing is and this is sort of, I understand why you would, and we talked about this at the beginning, but I really feel that that's a fool's errand at this point.
Yeah, but I understand where they're coming from.
Me too.
So the two we talked about were from independent creators. The two we've remained to talk about, Tales from the Valiant and Level Up, or at least Tales from the Valley, are from established creators. So I understand it's probably people see that their videos or their supplements, when they are 5e related, they tend to do better financially or content wise. And they recognize that this is maybe where the money is. And again, there are, I think, people who, I am one of them, who have had a lot of fun playing 5e and continue to have a lot of fun playing 5e. And they want it to be better. And I understand where they're coming from. But again, it is tough to find that sweet spot between redoing something a little bit, building a new system, and you can end up in that uncanny design valley really fast. I mean, this is going to take too long to talk about, so we'll have to talk about it next time. But there is a real problem with the economic incentives of making either something for 5e or a 5e clone or something like that, because that just gets you more money. It's the same reason why people make supplements or hacks or whatever, or they want to put out a setting book, and they clearly would be better for just about any other system, and they do it in 5e. And I don't really know how to fix that, but it's it's got some negative externalities, Matt. Yeah, it does. But again, maybe we will be wrong, and the result will be everyone who wants to play Dungeons & Dragons playing Dungeons & Dragons, but not with a million different systems, including D&D 2014 and 2024.
That is a good outcome.
All the other ones.
A good vision.
That's what I'm, again, abundance plus equity, the four futures outcome. All right, Rob, thanks for talking about this with me. We'll be back with more. If you have questions or thoughts about, or have discovered one of the 5e hacks, clones, Heartbreakers that we haven't mentioned, send us an email at dmofnone@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it'll change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or